Hi, friends. Most indie authors treat their book like a creative project. But what if you treated it like an operational one? And the inside scoop is that this matters more than most authors realize, because writing the book is only one part of publishing successfully. The rest of it, the timelines, the decisions, the tools, the moving pieces, the launch prep, that's where things can start feeling chaotic fast. If you've ever felt like you're trying to write, publish, market, organize your files, build your author platform, and somehow keep your sanity all at the same time, you're not doing anything wrong. You just probably need a better operational approach. When you start treating your book launch like a project to manage instead of a bunch of disconnected tasks to react to, everything gets more streamlined, more realistic, and honestly, a whole lot more peaceful. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 categories of tasks every indie author business has to manage, the 5 publishing phases those tasks need to be spread across, how timeline visibility of your launch helps you avoid overwhelm, why building your infrastructure first makes every future launch easier, and how to use a project management tool like Asana or Trello as the hub for your whole author business. Let's get into it. The what? 5 categories of tasks every indie author business must change. Every indie author business has 5 major categories of work to manage throughout the publishing process. First, there's writing and editing. This is all of the creative work from first draft to final manuscript, brainstorming, outlining, drafting, revising, beta readers, developmental edits, copy edits, proofreading. All of it lives here. Then, publishing and production. This includes the book cover, formatting, audiobook production, ISBNs, uploading files, print setup, ebook setup, quality checks, and making sure the book itself is technically ready to publish. Then distribution and platforms. This is where your book lives. Amazon, Ingram Spark, direct sales from your website, other retailers, metadata, backend platform setup, and file organization. Then marketing, sales, and reader connection. This includes your launch strategy, email campaigns, social content, promotions, reader engagement, and ongoing visibility after the book goes live. Finally, business and operations. And this right here is the category most indie authors neglect. This is the infrastructure that holds everything else together. Your brand positioning, website, email platform, automations, community setup, systems, team coordination, financial tracking, and the behind-the-scenes operations that keep your author business running like a business. If you skip this piece, every launch feels harder than it has to. Inside business and operations, I especially want you to think about your foundational pillars. I like to organize them this way. Your author brand and platform, your email list and reader connection, your financial and administrative organization, your legal business setup and agreements, and your file management and organization. Those are the pieces that support not just the book, but every book you want to publish going forward. So those are the categories of work. Now, let's talk about when all of that work should actually happen. The when. 5 publishing phases and strategic timeline distribution. This is where project management becomes a game changer. It's not enough to know what needs to be done. You also need to know when each category of work should carry the most weight. I like to think about the publishing process in 5 phases. First is the writing and development phase. This is where you're primarily focused on writing the book. But this is also a fantastic time to begin your foundational business work. Not all at once, but enough that you're not scrambling later. Then, the editing and production phase. Now, your manuscript is being refined, and you're moving deeper into production. This is also the phase where you continue setting up your business infrastructure, refining your systems, and getting the operational pieces in place. Then, the pre-launch phase. At this point, your business foundations should mostly be complete. Now, your focus shifts towards launch-specific tasks, reader nurture, promotional content, email sequences, and making sure your launch plan is ready to go. Then, launch phase. This is your high visibility phase. You're actively promoting, engaging readers, sending emails, and showing up consistently, and managing the momentum around your release. Finally, the post-launch and ongoing phase. This is where sustainability matters. You're continuing reader engagement, supporting sales, reviewing what worked, documenting your process, and preparing your system so the next book is easier. The key insight here is the early phases are where you build the infrastructure, and the later phases are where you execute the launch. If you try to do both at the same time, everything starts feeling too heavy. Timeline visibility and strategic workload distribution. Now, let's talk about visibility. One of the most powerful things you can do as an indie author is to get your entire publishing timeline into one visual view. That could be a timeline view in Asana. It could be a calendar view in Trello with due dates mapped out. The exact tool matters less than being able to see the full picture. Because when you can actually see your timeline, you stop making decisions in isolation, and you can stop bottlenecks. You can see task clusters. You can catch overload before it turns into burnout. And you can make smarter choices about what needs to happen earlier. A very common mistake indie authors make is trying to do all three of these things at once: writing the book, building their business foundations, and preparing for launch, all at the same time. This is a recipe for overwhelm. A much more strategic approach is to front-load your infrastructure work during the writing and editing phases, when the promotional pressure is lower. For example, in the writing phase, you might set up your website, email platform, brand positioning, and financial tracking. In the editing phase, you might finalize your launch strategy, create a lead magnet, and build your email sequences. And then in the pre-launch phase, you're executing nurture content and reader engagement because the system is already ready. Then in the launch phase, you're focused on promotion and community because your infrastructure is supporting you instead of competing with you in your time. This matters in real life. Imagine an author looks at her launch week and realizes she has 47 tasks sitting in one 7-day window. That is not a motivation problem. That is a workload distribution problem. But when she moves the foundational tasks earlier during writing and editing, suddenly launch week becomes more manageable, focused, and a whole lot saner. This is the beauty of timeline planning. Building your infrastructure first equals easier launches forever. This is the part I really want indie authors to hear. Your first book is not just about publishing one book. It's also about building the infrastructure for your entire indie author business. Because once your foundations are built, every future launch gets easier. Why? Because you're not starting from scratch anymore. You already have a website, an email platform, a reader connection system, your brand positioning, your back-end processes, and a project management tool that tracks everything. So when book 2 comes around, you're not rebuilding the business or filling in the gaps. You're just managing the new book's tasks. That changes everything. Instead of spending 4 to 5 months trying to create the whole machine while also launching the book, maybe your next launch only needs 6 to 8 weeks of focused execution because the infrastructure already exists. And that's what sustainability looks like. You build it once, refine it over time, and then your publishing process becomes smoother, faster, and less exhausting. I've seen this with authors who publish multiple books. The first one takes the most effort because they're building the foundation. But by book 2 and book 3, they have systems, templates, workflows, and a rhythm. Things still require work, of course, but the work is cleaner, it's more strategic, and it doesn't feel like reinventing the wheel every single time. So if your first book feels heavier, that doesn't mean you're failing. It simply means you're building the operational backbone your future books will benefit from. Making it real. Project management tool as the hub. So how do you make all of this real? You use a project management tool as your central hub. That could be Asana. That could be Trello. Use the tool you'll actually maintain. What matters is that your tool lets you track all 5 task categories, your publishing phases, deadlines and dependencies, and your ongoing business operations after launch. A simple setup might look like this: one main border project for the book launch, sections or labels for the 5 task categories, due dates tied to your publishing phases, a timeline or calendar view so you can see workload distribution, recurring tasks or templates for repeat processes. And why does this matter? Because your project tool becomes your one source of truth. Instead of trying to remember what lives in your notes app, what lives in your inbox, what lives in your head, and what lives on sticky notes all over your desk, everything goes into one organized system. Nothing falls through the cracks. And after launch, that tool doesn't disappear. It becomes your operations dashboard. You can track post-launch promotions, content repurposing, reader engagement, administrative tasks, and preparation for book 2. That is where the real magic is. You're not just planning a launch, you're building a repeatable author business system. Conclusion. So here's the big picture. When you combine the 5 categories of tasks, 5 publishing phases, and clear timeline visibility, you move from chaotic book launching into confident authorpreneurship. And more than that, you create a sustainable indie author business, not just a one-time publishing event. Your first book is not only a book launch, it's an investment in the infrastructure of your entire author career. If this video resonated with you, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next video on building your indie author business. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of the 5 categories feels the most overwhelming to you right now? I guess that's it. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.